function. I don't think we're going to really need the equipment during the consent agenda, the first part of the meeting, and it will be repaired. We have a replacement that will be put in during the break. So with that, Madam Clerk, could you take the roll call?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Mr. Birch.
Here.
Ms. Demboski.
Present.
Mr. Steele.
Here.
Mr. Starr.
Here.
Mr. Flynn. Present. Mr. Trombley. Here. Mr. Hall.
Here.
Ms. Gray Jackson.
Honored to be here.
Ms. Johnston. Here. Mr. Honeman.
Here.
Mr. Traney.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. That's awesome. Spring break, and I've got everybody here. Mr. Flynn, would you lead us in the pledge? Mr. Vacalis, you have a report for the mayor this evening?
Thank you so much, Mr. Hall. As you know, the mayor is out of state. You mentioned spring break, and this is a good opportunity for him and his wife. I would like to announce, however, and I know most of you know it, of an unfortunate and very sad incident that occurred to one of our firefighters who passed away after completing a training exercise, and that was Jeff Bayless from Station 11. Hearts and our prayers go out to the family. That's all I have to report. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. And I'm going to ask that we all stand and have a moment of silence in memory of Jeff. Thank you. And I have no report other than that moment of remembrance, so I'll begin with you, Mr. Birch.
No report, sir.
Thank you. Ms. Demboski.
Can you come back to me?
Yes. Mr. Steele.
No report, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Starr.
No, sir.
Mr. Flynn. Mr. Trombley.
No report, but at our last leadership meeting, or yesterday, Mr. Chairman, I would like to say that we did discuss with the clerk's office the upcoming election, and everything seems to be on schedule, and I'd like to thank the clerk's office for that. And again, just wanted to emphasize that if there's anything the clerk's office does need from the Assembly as far as additional budget appropriations, please don't hesitate to ask.
Okay. Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to take that opportunity from Mr. Trombley. It was sort of like a softball that he threw me. Please go to the clerk's Facebook page. We have some new logos that are vote on April 1, and also the vote on April 1 has the ship and the anchor, and they're great Muni blue and gold colors. And then the next logo has our ship, and it has a cast your vote with the anchor. So they're really great logos, and we'd love it if everybody would share them on their Facebook pages. Our ombudsman made it his profile picture, so we would appreciate it if everyone would do that and get out the vote on April 1st. Thank you, Mr. Chair and Mr. Trombley.
Thank you. Ms. Gray Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Today, the Audit Committee had a meeting with BDO, who's our independent audit contractors, and it was basically the contract-required entrance conference, and the purpose of the meeting is to identify problem areas and discuss the interim work to be performed. And we were scheduled to have it in December, but it just didn't work out, but at least we got it done today. And one of the problems that the auditors have is within the controller division for the municipalities, staff turnover issues, but I'm sure that they'll work that out. And then they're working to meet target dates for opinions. General government's target date is May 28th. Single audit's target date is May 28th. AWW May 16th, MLMP May 23rd, the Port May 21st, Civic Convention Center April 4th, and they tentatively plan to get it before the Assembly at the June 10th meeting. On another note, Mr. Chairman, I had the honor of attending the National League of Cities Congressional City Conference. Unfortunately, I was only able to stay for my board meeting and finance committee meeting and one general session because I wanted to be here in person so my constituents can see me sitting here and not on the phone. It was a really great board meeting and a great finance committee meeting, and one of the things that we talked about was the prescription drug program, and I was really excited when they passed out a flyer and showed me in Anchorage that our citizens have saved over $34,000, and the potential is to save even more. So I'm I'm asking my colleagues if they would help me distribute the prescription cards throughout all the pharmacies throughout the city, because everybody takes them, and our citizens stand to save a whole lot of money. On another issue, I talked to Mr. Haddon, the purchasing director, about a year ago and asked him if the city was participating in the National League of Cities U.S. Communities Government Purchasing Alliance, and he said no. But I figured that he would get us on board, and he did, and I was so excited to see that our community, because of this effort of NLC, has saved so far $224,000, and that's a lot of money when you think of it. We stand to save a whole lot more, so I'm really happy about that. And then yesterday we had a great presentation from Arnie Duncan, the U.S. Secretary of Education, and NLC, National League of Cities, and the U.S. Department of Education announced yesterday and signed a memorandum of understanding detailing a plan to strengthen partnerships among federal and local governments, school families, and other organizations with the goal to advance learning and enhance student engagement and improve schools. And I think this is a wonderful, wonderful effort on part of the federal government. To date, there are 14 cities that have signed this MOU, and I'm hopeful that Anchorage will do the same. And one more thing, National League of Cities celebrate 90 years of existence this year, and Anchorage has been a member of National League of Cities for 55 years. So that's really a wonderful achievement. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Honeman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Ms. Gray-Jackson, on the updates. When you go back and representing our municipality at the NLC and on the board, and I know you're doing a terrific job, so thank you for updates. Mr. Chairman, we have the next scheduled meeting for the Public Safety Committee on Wednesday, March 19th, and just to make sure I keep reminding folks, at the beginning of the year I announced that we had changed the dates, but it is the third Wednesdays every month, third Wednesdays of the month, this one being the 19th of March, and it'll be in the conference room right outside the chambers here in between the Wildemarson and the Assembly chambers. And we generally have fairly well attendance as yourself, of course, and other members of the committee, as well as some other Assembly members. That said, I did attend the last Alaska Railroad board meeting, and I'm not sure if that beeper's for me to shut up and move on. I don't know.
We have no idea what it's doing, Mr. Honeman.
Okay,
it's just
no
talking to us.
I will try to hurry. We did attend. I did attend with a representative of Assembly members Steele, Traney, and Gray-Jackson at the Alaska Railroad board meeting, in conjunction with trying to discuss alternatives to the Mat-Su Anchorage Committee on Regional Transit and Transportation Issues. And in discussion, asking the board, if you will, their input as to possibility of a rail system, a passenger rail system, during the winter months between the Valley and Anchorage. And they seemed fairly receptive. Of course, they seemed also they know that there's some challenges. A lot of it issues around financial. So I look forward to having there's a meeting amongst the committee members here rather soon, and we'll keep the body updated.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Johnston.
No report, thank you.
Mr. Traney.
Mr. Chairman, no report, but I just want to ask Mr. Vacalis, we've got this simulated earthquake on the 27th, Mr. Vacalis? Is that correct?
Yes, sir. There is it's a little over a week-long exercise. It's a national exercise. The state of Alaska is participating, and the municipality is participating. It's a series of events that will be occurring. We will be activating the Emergency Operations Center. We also will have real play on the ground, simulated, of course, with several of our agencies. The Port of Anchorage is involved, our fire department, our police department, and several other entities.
Will Jay Bear be participating in this?
I'm sorry?
Will Jay Bear be
Yes, sir.
participating?
Yes, they
I'd heard something they were going to run their vehicles through some of the neighborhoods to simulate pavement breaks or something. I just want the public to know what's going to happen, and the black helicopters are not coming into Anchorage, because we've got some people that get concerned when they see that happening.
There has been some media coverage on it, but I also saw the media plan, and I think that the public at large will probably have a lot of knowledge as to what's going on.
I just want to make sure the public knows about it.
Not only the exercise, but also some of the events associated with remembering what happened 50 years ago.
Thank you, Mr. Vacalis.
You bet. Thank you.
Ms. Demboski.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Tomorrow, Mr. Honeman and I believe, are the assembly members assigned to the joint municipal Anchorage and Matsu-Borough Transportation Subcommittee. So we have our meeting tomorrow at 11:30 at Jitters and Eagle River. So if anybody's looking for a good time, stop on by. Additionally, Mr. Chairman, I have a couple of disclosures tonight. Tonight we have item 9B7, a resolution in support of a variable benefit approach for public safety employees. As with item 11A carried over from the last meeting regarding HB 247, I have no private or financial benefit that would be attached to my household. As an Anchorage firefighter, my husband is vested in an earlier tier and it would not be included. I am confident that I can act in the public interest on these items. Additionally, tonight we have item 95, an AFD purchase of e-patient care reporting software, which carries no personal household benefit to AFD employees. I make these routine disclosures as an elected official under the Ethics Code.
Thank you, Ms. Demboski. As with other items of this nature, I recognize no conflict for you, and I would ask if the Assembly concurs. Seeing no one objecting, Ms. Demboski, you will participate. Thank you,
Mr. Chairman.
We now have the addendum to the agenda, which I would have a motion to incorporate.
Move to incorporate.
I will read the addendum into the agenda, and it is 9B7 AR72, a resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly in support of a variable benefit retirement to achieve a balanced approach in the retirement system for public safety employees engaged in protective occupations. 9B8 AR73, a resolution appropriating a donation of $8,489 received from the Friends of the Library to the Miscellaneous Operational Grants Funds 261 and a grant for $19,521 from the State of Alaska Department of Education and Early Development State Direct Federal Pass-Through Fund Grants 231 to purchase equipment and install upgrades necessary to launch the Innovation Lab at Lusac Library, all within the Library Department, and that is accompanied by AM 152. We have 9D16, AM 153, remand of Eberhard et al. Versus Municipality of Anchorage. 9DF, 9, AO 40. An ordinance of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly establishing the Eklutna Village Overlay District, amending Anchorage Municipal Code, Chapter 21.10, and the zoning map of the Municipality of Anchorage. And that has a public hearing on 3/25/14. 9F10, AO41, an ordinance approving annexation of properties within Loma Estates Subdivision, Block 1, Lot 6A, Block 1, Lot 7, Block 1, Lot 8, Block 2, Lot 1, Block 2, Lot 2, Block 2, Lot 5, Block 3, Lot 5, and Blocks 3 of Lot 11 to the South Golden View Rural Road Service areas pursuant to Alaska Statute 29.35.450 C3 and amend the South Golden View RRSA boundaries in Anchorage Municipal Code, Section 27.30.700, effective retroactively as of January 1, 2014. and that has a public hearing on 3/25/14, and it's accomplished by AM 151. And we have under 14G, AO 38, and we have a AIM number 46, Elections Commission's Resolution. And that is all of our addendum to the agenda. We have no laid on the table. I would take a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Move to approve.
And items to be pulled, beginning with you, Mr. Birch.
The first item would be 9A1. Thank you.
Ms. Demboski.
No items.
Mr. Steele.
No items, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Starr.
Off the addendum 9F9 to set the public hearing date.
Mr. Flynn. Mr. Trombley.
9 Echo 3.
Ms. Gray Jackson.
No, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Honeman.
From the addendum, Mr. Chairman, 9 Bravo 7.
Ms. Johnston.
No item.
Mr. Trainee.
Nothing.
Thank you. I show that we have pulled this evening 9 Alpha 1, 9 Bravo 7, 9 Echo 3, and 9 Foxtrot 9. Did I miss any items? Seeing not, I would ask that you please vote on the consent agenda lest the items pulled for action. Please vote. Passes unanimously. We now have before us item A1, and Mr. Trombley, you have a...
Move to postpone this item until 6:30.
Do both of those at the same time, Mr.
Okay,
Trombley.
and
We'll
then-
take care of it.
All right. I'll move to change the order. I'll move to change the order of the day to take up items 9A1 and 9 Echo 3 after 6:30. This is to accommodate the Women's Commission so they can be here to receive the resolution and present the report.
Second.
Any objection to reordering the agenda? Seeing, hearing none, we will hear those two items after 6:30. We have now before us 9 Bravo 7.
Move to approve. And, Mr. Chairman, I just ask respectfully if I could have my name added as a co-sponsor on this resolution.
That would be our pleasure. Thank you. You need to move it.
I move to approve it.
Okay, and we've got a second. Please vote. Carries unanimously. We now have before us 9 Foxtrot 9. Mr. Starr, that
Sure, that's only to set the time it returns to the Assembly to May 20th.
Got to
So
introduce.
I can't.
it's to 5:20, Mr. Starr.
Yeah, I mean, if I need to move it to introduction, I can surely do that.
Second.
Yeah.
Or I'll be a third on it.
Okay, we've got first.
May 20th back in front of the Assembly work session on May 16th, if we can accommodate that.
Yes, sir.
And also a subsequent referral as required to Planning and Zoning between now and then.
5:20 work session on the 16th.
And then Planning and Zoning will need to take it up prior.
Thank you. That concludes our consent agenda. And with that, I am going to go ahead and break so
Chairman,
we can get our
Mr. Chairman?
equipment fixed.
Mr. Chairman, can we do item 11A before we...
Yes, we certainly can, Mr. Flynn. And I'd also ask, prior to us doing 11A, is there anyone here that was appointed to a board or a commission? If there are, please come up and introduce yourself. Seeing none, we now have before us item 11A, a resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly in support of House Bill number 247, an act relating to the Protective Occupation Retirement Council relating to the participation of certain employees in the defined benefit and defined contribution plans of the Public Employees Retirement System and providing for an effective date. Mr. Flynn.
Mr. Chairman, I guess I'd defer to Mr. Trainier, Ms. Gray Jackson as the sponsor. I presume we're going to postpone this indefinitely.
Through the chairman, I appreciate that, Mr. Flynn. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move to postpone this resolution indefinitely because we approved another one that satisfied the concerns of some of my colleagues earlier in the meeting. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Okay, that item is postponed indefinitely. Is there any objection? None.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
since I think everybody that would be giving us an update as far as the Anchorage Centennial mission.
Technically, I can't do that before
For
6.
I was just wondering if it was
Okay.
okay.
We're going to break. I call the meeting back to order. We're going to begin with item 11B.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I'd like to move a point of personal privilege before we get started.
I definitely have you in the queue, Ms. Gray Jackson.
Oh, okay.
I'm going to do this one item real
Okay.
quick. And
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
you are welcome. As soon as I get to the right page. We now have before us item 11B, AO number 13, an ordinance of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly amending Anchorage Municipal Code, Chapter 1.15, to allow for disclosure and appropriate adjustment of travel reimbursement for municipal employees and elected officials engaging in candidate fundraising while on paid travel status for the municipality. This item is before us. Ms. Demboski?
I'm going to move to approve because I want to make a comment.
Yes.
Second.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, my intent, and I'll make the motion in just a minute, is to postpone this item till April 8th. But I did want to let the body know I'm debating, or not debating, I have multiple legal opinions helping me with certain definitions in here. That's the reason I'm postponing this. But I do plan on making an amendment to this document, and I've given it to the clerk. So if anybody would like to see it, they're more than welcome to. But I have every expectation of incorporating the Board of Ethics opinion, as well as I plan on making the effective date for this particular ordinance January 1st, 2015. That way it won't impact current elections that might be in the cycle. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to postpone this item till April 8th.
Second.
Second. Any objection from the body? Seeing, hearing none, this item will be postponed until the meeting of April the 8th. And Ms. Elvi Gray Jackson, you asked for a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I think Mr. Trainey seconded my motion to ask for that. Anyway, I want to give a shout-out to Daisha Eaton from KSKA. She has been working with us, along with the rest of the media, for quite some time now, and as all of you may know, she's going to be leaving to go and work in Bethel, and I'd like to give her an opportunity to come up to the microphone and say whatever she wants to say. But I just wanted to personally thank her and tell her it's been a pleasure working with her, and she will definitely be missed. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I'm willing to do that if we get to ask her any question that we want to ask.
This is a switch, huh? Well, I just wanted to thank you for the privilege of being able to report about municipal politics over the past couple of years. I know it's been an interesting couple of years, and everyone has been so professional. And really, you have taught me a lot about how municipal politics work, and I know I'll take that with me out to Bethel. Thank you so much.
Mr. Flynn?
I'm just glad I'm not going to get any more Tuesday afternoon emails. What am I supposed to cover tonight? And I have to think of what we're doing. So have fun, Dacia. I know you've been out west before. You'll enjoy it again, I'm sure.
Mr. Honeman?
Dacia, and who do you have as coming behind you, or has someone been selected yet?
We're not sure yet. There are lots of applicants, and I'm sure they'll have someone very good.
I know Lynn had taken a very great pride in walking you around and introducing you to several people, and I had the privilege of doing that, meeting with you as you were coming in the door. So I was hoping you might be able to do that, pass the baton thing. So
I wish.
Well, stay warm.
Thank you.
Ms. Johnston?
So there's a number of NPR folks that went to Bethel and then went to D.C. Is that your plan?
I can't divulge this at this time. I'm not sure. Who knows? Right now, I'm just thinking about Bethel. Thank you.
Mr. Trainee?
Dacia, thank you so much for constantly giving us a call and just keeping the message going out to the public on what's going on here. Without you, this place would be vacant. So thank you, ma'am, for getting the message out.
Thank you.
The only question that I have actually is of Mr. Flynn. I received those emails on Tuesday as well, and I'm curious. Mine says, I inquired of Assemblymember Flynn, and I'm not sure he understood the question. So did her say she asked me and she wasn't sure I understood the question as well?
I don't want to give away all our secrets.
All the best, Dacia.
Thank you so much.
You bet. Take care. We now have an assembly appearance request, the Anchorage Centennial update, and I see a number of members of the committee here. Nice sweatshirts.
Well, that was the first thing I was going to mention. Daryl's going to stand next to me. So I know you all received your favorite Seahawks or whatever memorabilia sweatshirt, but this year you have to go to your favorite grocery store or wherever, Daryl will tell us, and acquire your Anchorage Centennial sweatshirt or
hoodie,
bag, etc. As Daryl displays all of that, let me just say that as you recall, last April when you all approved the first $500,000 for this project, we told you we'd come back quarterly, and we've done that. And our objective tonight is to have a group of people talk to you about the Centennial, and now that Daryl has shown you all of the gear that's available, I'm going to turn it over to our very accomplished Executive Director, Susan Duck, who I'm sure you all know, and she'll take you through the program. Oh, you even get a highball. That's right. There you go.
Thanks, Jim. Good evening, Chairman Hall, members of the Assembly, administration, and guests. I'm excited to be here and update y'all on the progress that the Anchorage Centennial Committee has made. We have a fantastic advisory committee, and we have a wonderful group of volunteers that are working on all of our committees. We have monthly meetings that are averaging 60 to 70% of our attendees at these meetings are new people. So people are hearing about what's going on. They want to come visit, see what's happening with the Centennial, and word is spreading, even though we haven't started our full force marketing yet. To underline, the Anchorage Centennial Celebration is a program of new and existing events and projects commemorating our 100-year journey from tent city to northern metropolis. The Anchorage Centennial is designed to invite and engage everyone in our community and leave a lasting legacy for future generations to enjoy. We have several partnerships with organizations in the community. The first I'll review is Visit Anchorage as our tourism marketing pros. They are assisting us with social media support, public relations, advertising, and have a seat on our marketing committee. Julie Soppy is also a member of our advisory committee. Within the Visit Anchorage structure, they have a committee of movers and shakers in the tourism, restaurant, hotel industry called the Big Wildlife Committee. They are supporting us in a big way and are working on several events, a Centennial Solstice concert in June on the 23rd. That will be down in Ship Creek and will feature the Spin Doctors. They're also working on a May Centennial Taste of Anchorage that will allow restaurants to create signature dishes celebrating the centennial. There will be marketing involved in that, and we'll try to generate some economic impact through the restaurants through that project. And in July of 2015, we'll have 100 days of the Anchorage Centennial that will take place from Memorial Day to Labor Day. So they are a great committee, very active, and everything they do is a success. We also have a fantastic partnership with the Alaska Humanities Forum. That group, led by, there you are, Nina Kimple, is handling several aspects of our process. They are handling the management and the request for proposals for our projects. Our legacy projects are the official film and documentary, the official book, the official mobile app and website. All of those projects are proceeding as they're all on task. We just had a fantastic update from David Holthouse with the forum on the mobile app, and it's going to be a great tool for educators and for the public, very interactive, and I'm eager to share more about that with you at a later date. They're also managing our Centennial grants. We had Cycle 1, where we had 45 completed applications, totaling $1.8 million. Our budget for the Centennial grants this cycle was around $231,000. Fortunately, the Rasmussen Foundation matched the money that the Muni and the mayor have contributed to support the Centennial, and that money is being distributed to worthy projects within the community. Our next grant cycle starts April 15th and runs through June 15th, and that's the next opportunity for projects, events, groups to submit an idea, to receive funding, and oversight, advice, and guidance from the Humanities Forum. They have done a great job meeting with people who are unfamiliar with the grant process and making it easy to learn how to apply for a grant and to understand what the process entails. In our budget, on page 5, you'll see that we have the money from the municipality, the Rasmussen Foundation, and I'm happy to say that to date we have raised $100,000 in private sector sponsorships. BP and ConocoPhillips have both come on. We have several other corporations that are in final negotiations for sponsorships, so I anticipate being able to double that within the next couple of months at a minimum. As you can see, our expenses are listed, showing the book, documentary, our online archive contingency, the community grants, a commitment to the Anchorage Museum, marketing and events, and administration. Again, just the sponsorship money that we're raising will be used to pay for marketing and our signature events. Any of the events that we are producing will be paid for by the money that we raise in the private sector. We're also fundraising through our Centennial merchandise that several folks are modeling for you tonight. It is going in stores now. It's in Cars, Huffman, should be in Fred Meyer and Walmart shortly. And we anticipate a nice revenue stream from that. Before we had produced the merchandise, we had retailers requesting it. I've also listed, and I won't go through one by one, but we've got some really exciting official events coming up. We've got a Byron Birdsall print to release. We've got the release of all the legacy projects, the Big Wildlife Committee events that we discussed. We'll have a premiere of the official film and documentary in September. We are hosting an Anchorage Centennial Day at the Alaska State Fair. We're working with the Gomez Foundation for a pond hockey tournament modeled on the one in Minnesota that's wildly successful. And we are working also on a visit from the Russian teaching ship, the Nadezhda. We also will have a series of official signature events in July, and we'll be announcing those as our plans are solid. Next, you'll see a monthly update on our upcoming events. How can people participate? Stop by one of these meetings. We've had various folks come in from the Assembly and other grant-making organizations. The first Tuesday of the month at 1 p.m. in the Mayor's Conference Room. It's a nice opportunity for us to give a quick update, but then the community members that are there can ask questions and share ideas and talk about projects that they're working on. And we find a really nice sense of collaboration among people at those meetings, so I'd encourage all to attend. The list of upcoming events, the memoir writing workshops that are being held at the schoolhouse. We have the Super Tour Finals and U.S. Cross Country Championships coming up at the end of March. Most of the cross country skiing Olympic team will be here racing in those races. So there's a significant amount of events, Assemblyman Trainee. You mentioned the earthquake. We have an earthquake commemoration that will happen on March 27th at the Anchorage Museum from 5 to 7. And there's also an Anchorage Community Theater event commemorating the earthquake as well. I've listed out the awards, the grant awards from our first cycle, so you can see how diverse and broad the impact to the community is. We've got everything from historic building projects. Trick or Treat Town is redoing the facades, so they're actual replicas of historic buildings in Anchorage. They received a grant. We've got quilters that received a grant, and that's a really neat project. They're doing decade by decade quilts illustrating our history. So you can go through those at your leisure, but you can see that we've got a very broad and exciting group, and I think we're up to almost 100 events that are considered official events at this point. You also have that list in your packet and some other information, but every month we'll have the upcoming events list on our website, and we encourage you to list that on your newsletters and share that with your friends, family, constituents. Please help us get the word out.
Okay. Mr. Horniman.
I want to thank you and the committee as well, and Mr. Darrell, I know, is really instrumental in trying to put together some of the packaging. We used to do that with Fairview. It's very, very effective. I think I have 3 shirts, Darrell, one of them probably in tatters now. So in any event, I'm really looking forward to a lot of these events and programs. As we come closer, we'll, I'm sure, get more details. I see a lot of TVA as to when they'll be and all, but the Anchorage Then and Now, the City Family of albums, the storytelling, the train, the Anchorage train, and how in the tent city. I mean, it's just all of it. It sounds very exciting. Of course, I love the hockey and the pond hockey. I think it's wonderful. So good on you for the efforts, and thank you for coming to the body and keeping us updated, as well as those that might be participating. We do have several young folks, young adults that are going to be up and coming soon through the high schools, and we're hoping that maybe you can get the youth involved and through the schools as well. You used to do Rondi at Barra Gulch, I remember, at Bartlett many years ago, and perhaps we could do some recreations and melodramas and things like that. So just wonderful work, and thanks for all your efforts.
Mr. Trainee.
Susan, thank you so much for this. This is what we asked for when we gave you guys the grant, so thank you very much. Look forward to the celebration. Thanks.
Thank you.
I've only got one question myself. Do we get to see the picture, or only the people in the audience?
Jim, shall we unveil?
Yeah.
Nina, do you want to make some remarks?
All right. This is the face of the 100th. It was the mayor's vision and our vision as well to kind of, what do you start with? 100 years? What depicts 100 years? Could be anything, but how is it going to be everything? So we decided that the best thing to do was to create an arc of history, which I think we did. And the mayor said, please make it colorful, make it beautiful, make it hangable. And I said, yeah, what you want is huggable, isn't it? And he went, yeah, huggable. I think we did that. And then the other thing that he wanted and we wanted, which I think Birdsall really knocked it out of the park was that he created a sense of majesty and beauty of what we are in Alaska with our mountains and our terrain. Because when we look out of our windows and doors now or out in the wilderness, wherever we are, we see all of this majestic beauty. And the people in that dire tent city, they saw that too. So we've depicted the Sleeping Lady in all of its glory and the Chugiak in all of its glory so that we can put it all together in one piece. And I kind of really think that this does it all. It is a good face of the 100th, and I hope you like it. We are going to make a fundraising prints out of it, and we're having all the mayors sign it. And I think it's going to be a really good thing. You'll see it everywhere. I hope all of you will get one of these and get friends to get one of these. The other thing we want in this kind of piece is to have the young people who will be here 10 and 20 years from now, and that they will be able to look at it and went, that's where I grew up. And I think it says all of those things. So we want the people in our audience to see it too. And so hope you like it. And before I move on to Nina Kempel, who's next, I'd just like to say one thing. I mean, all of you know me. I've been involved in all the events since Methuselah, from the millennium to the 25th anniversary of the state to the 50th anniversary of the state and now the 100th. And I was asked to be on the Mayor's Advisory Council, and I really enjoyed that and just turn all that hard work and dedication to Susan Duck, and she's done a wonderful job. But I thought I would at least share with you at least one or two thoughts that I had in watching this process develop, because I've watched a lot of processes develop and seem to come together. And as I look at the funding that the Assembly gave to the anniversary and watch that turn into these legacy projects, of which I've seen parts of them all, they'll make you proud. It's good. It's really good. And then at our meeting the other day, we were getting a whole rundown of the new grants that we're going to make and that we want yet to make. And we have lots of people, really lots of people in line who are sending in forms to get a grant. And their plans and their creativity is phenomenal. Some wonderful things are coming out of this 100th. And I remember thinking during the millennium, one of the best things that we can do in festivals or major events like this, centennials, particularly like the 100th anniversary, that's a big thing, is that it really brings people together more than a lot of people ever think. The town comes together, optimism goes through the roof, and in this kind of piece, this centennial, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people are going to be involved because they're creating the events. And when you look at all of the different segments that are already organized, they're people you know, they're business people, they're movers and shakers, they're people who do every kind of work in this town, and they are bonding together to make this happen, and they are so excited. Now, what else can we want in a community than that? Because the optimism really gets high. People go, here we go, we're in Anchorage, Alaska, we're making it work, come look at us. Tourism, they're building whole packages for tourism around this 100th anniversary. And I dare say that we'll get on the national news a lot too. So I personally thank you for your support. I hope if they come to you again for other things, consider it very carefully, because it will make a difference in the community. This is a one-shot deal. None of us are going to be alive at the next one. I'm sorry to tell you that, but I don't think we will be. But we need to really make the most of this 100th and just make it soar. And personally, I think we're really on the way. I'm very proud and privileged to be part of the advisory committee. I hope you like the piece, and we'll have the prints out before too long. Thank you very much. And Nina Kempel with the Humanities Forum, and let me tell you the job they're doing. Oh, my God. Big stuff.
Well, thank you all. I think these guys have just about summed everything up. There is a lot of great momentum in this. It's been a wonderful partnership working together with you, but also with the whole team here. One of the other jobs that the Humanities Forum has sort of some responsibility for is fiscal oversight, and you heard Susan describe all the multiple levels of funding coming in from the different sources, so it's our job to make sure everything's going in the right place and being coded in the right way. I put in your packets one right behind Susan's. It's this brown one. It's a little bit of a summary overview right now. I think the Humanities Forum can say with 100% certainty that all the funding is being tracking correctly, and that all the funds are going into separate grants and being managed that accordingly. One of the other jobs that we have is quality oversight. So when we talk about the book, the app, and the documentary, we're out there meeting with them every other week, making sure they're making the right amount of progress so we can hit all the target dates that Susan defined. And when we feel very comfortable that all of our projects, our legacy projects, are moving forward, they're spending money in the accurate way, they're meeting their deliverables that we set up with them, so we're confident that we're going to get some just fantastic projects. And then the final thing we do is make sure our community grantees, now remember these are people that many times have never worked in the grant process, are getting the information they need, are actually able to spend money fast enough. Our challenge with them is actually to be able to move them along so they can deliver a great project in the timeline that they did. And right now we feel like we paid out $52,800 of the 231, which is a pretty good starting rate for all those first-time grantees. And then finally, the last thing that I would just add is echo what Susan said about the new, the second round of community grants. This is one place that all of you can get involved in encouraging your representatives to really apply. We love new grantees. We love people that are coming from all parts of the city. We anticipate from our interest in the first round and interest that's been walking in the Alaska Humanities Forum door that we'll have up to 70 people apply, which is roughly about 1.7% of last time. So that puts us up in about $2.5 million of asks. So we're very excited, but I think it also puts a daunting job on us to select the very best projects out of all those great ones. So that's all that I had.
Thank you. We appreciate the update.
Denise mentioned that each of the mayors is going to be signing this. I advocated that it be every assembly member who's ever served, but didn't make it. Sorry.
Maybe on the back.
Yeah, maybe on the back. That's a good idea. Why don't you put that in the form of a resolution, and maybe we can do that. Seriously, the final comment that I'd like to make and we'd like to make is that, as you saw in the first cycle, 45 applications were made for $1.8 million. There were 13 grants awarded for $230,000. We'll probably have an equally successful application process in April, which means we'll have a tremendous unfilled need, even though we're doing an excellent job of obtaining private funds. And my hope is to ask you, and maybe in concert with the Rasmussen Foundation and other private donors, for additional contributions. But we'll come back at you next time for that. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you. We now have before us item 14A, AO number 26, an ordinance amending the zoning map and providing for the rezoning of approximately 1.81 acres from R to M, multiple family residential district, and PLI, public lands and institution districts for lots 5, 6, and 7, block 14, Roosevelt Park, addition within the southwest 1/4 of section 25, T13 and R4WS.M.
Waive reading.
Thank you. This item is before us for public testimony. Anyone to testify? Anyone at all?
Good evening. I'm Spenard Lion John Regan. Spenard Lions were organized in November 1950 and have been in Spenard since then. We encourage any and all land that can be developed into a park be dedicated as such. As you look around our community, Every vacant lot is being scraped and covered some way or other. In Anchorage Ordinance 84-199, that property was designated as dedicated for the permanent or long-term park and recreation purposes. This session before you is nothing but a housekeeping. It's to get it rezoned into PLI, which it should have been done a long time ago. I ask for your support in doing this so we can make sure that land is preserved forever as a park. Thank you.
Mr. Steele?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I have a couple of housekeeping matters that was brought to my attention.
Mr. Steele, we can't do that till it's before us. We've got to finish public testimony.
Well, we're going to get testimony on erroneous data.
Well, we'll have to correct it after the public testimony. Anyone else?
My name is William Marsh, M-A-R-S-H. I live next door to the lots in question, which is known as Uri Park. This property has come before you before and was withdrawn. It has come back before planning and zoning and was passed as recommended for PLIP. Our objections to the rezone at the time for PLI was it was going to be done to facilitate the construction of a new building in this park. Myself and other neighbors objected strenuously. It was withdrawn. That was supposedly, the development of the park was withdrawn. The Lions Club were the developers. So I am confused why this is back before this board as a PLI rather than the Planning and Zoning's recommendation for a PLIP. And I still remain concerned as to the future unintended consequences of a rezone of this property. All we've ever asked is that we have a park in our neighborhood and that we don't have non-conforming use. I'll answer any questions if you have them.
Have no questions. Thank you. Anyone else? Anyone at all? Seeing, hearing none, this item is before the body for action. Mr. Steele?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A couple of...
Mr. Steele, I need a motion.
Move approval first, Mr. Steele.
I move approval.
Okay.
Second.
Okay. Mr. Steele?
Thank you. Like I said, there's some erroneous material that was added into this and a couple of changes. The 2 pages behind the AO describe the previous project and should be eliminated from the package. And then I have a change on line 6, change the and to 2, and add the small p after PLI.
Mr. Chairman, you're not allowed to change the title. I don't imagine that to be the case, and I have a point to question the removal of the planning and zoning findings. Can we have somebody speak to Mr. Steele's from the administration?
Yeah.
He got a second to his changes, did he?
Not yet.
Not yet.
You cannot.
Mr. Weaver?
Well, there was 2 of them. One of them was the title change, which...
Right, and you're correct.
Well, what's Mr. Weaver speaking to, though, is my point.
Right. No, he did not do that in the form of a motion. All I've got is the first and a second on the item itself, Mr. Starr.
Who has the floor?
Pardon?
Who has the floor?
Who has the floor?
Mr. Steele or myself?
Yes.
Yes. Who has the floor?
Mr. Steele has the floor.
Let's resolve the
and
issue.
Mr. Weaver is going to answer the question.
I'd like Mr. Weaver to answer the question.
Mr. Chairman, legal's also has been briefed on this as well. We've discussed this, but the 2-page resolution in your packet is from a previous decision. The commission just heard this, the March the 3rd. There's not a current resolution before you because it hasn't been developed, but they did approve it to PLIP. There is some confusion about with respect to when you have a property zone PLI and the P designation, and the code says that when it is dedicated park and it's zoned to PLI, it gets an attribute of a P, a small p. So it will happen even though the Planning Commission approved it, quote, to PLIP. It's will be designated as PLIP on the zoning map, should you approve it. Legal can speak to the typographical error on page line 6. The and should be a 2. The rest of the section 1 really spells out it's going to PLI, and it was an administrative mistake.
Okay. Todd? Just a moment. Mr. Starr, you have a question to Mr. Weaver?
Only the schedule, when are we going to see the findings from planning and zoning? If it was a third, I understand what you recited, but are you indicating that we should postpone action until we see it?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Starr, I'm just conveying what the Planning Commission did. They did approve it to PLIP. There is no resolution at this time, though.
Okay. Todd?
Through the chair, this is Mr. Sherwood from the Law Department. I had seen the typographical error and pointed it out to Mr. Steele, but I understand that it can't be amended. I think the only thing I'd say is it doesn't affect, it's my opinion, it doesn't affect the notice issue to the public because it was essentially a typographical error.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like a ruling on whether or not we can make that change. If we can't make that change, I want to.
Well, I think if this isn't time sensitive, what I would prefer as chair is just postpone this and bring the new document. Yes.
Move to postpone to 2 weeks. Oh, and then change it. Right. That's what I was originally going to do, but I moved to postpone indefinitely.
Second.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, can I speak to that?
Yes, you may.
I don't mind, but I would rather see a more complete packet. 1 page of that, we're taking residential, even though it's a residential 2 off the residential market. There are obviously some neighborhood concerns. I don't see the posting data history of when we advised the community. You know, there's a formality, I think, that we can follow. It may be all inside the planning and zoning packet, but this is highly unusual to have it so skimpy.
And when we came into the meeting, Mr. Starr, that's what we were going to do, was postpone indefinitely, and then a decision was made to maybe put a P in. It's just better to postpone this indefinitely and bring a complete package, as you're referring
case
to.
history, the original
Correct.
zoning, the 2 with the M designation, all that going away, it would be helpful for me to have more data.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, we got a motion to postpone indefinitely. Please vote. That carries unanimously. I guess we have no screens now. Okay. Okay. Very good. We will. We're going to go back and pick up 9A1 and 9E3 according to the way that we reordered the agenda. So we have before us 9A1. Who's?
Move to approve.
Second.
And who's reading?
I am, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
This is a resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly recognizing March 2014 as National Women's History Month. Whereas American women of every race, class, and ethnic background have made historic contributions to the growth and strength of our country, our community, and our city in countless recorded and unrecorded ways. And whereas American women have played and continue to play an critical economic, cultural, and social role in every sphere of the life of the U.S. by constituting a significant portion of a labor force working inside and outside of the home, and whereas American women have served as leaders and played a unique role throughout the history of our country by providing the majority of the volunteer labor force and establishing early charitable, philanthropic, and cultural institutions, and whereas Alaskan women have been creating history as leaders in government, education, law, civil rights, and the arts, including Katie Hurley, Arla Sturgeluski, Ashley Dickerson, Carol Como, Elizabeth Petrovic, Katie John, Kay Litton, and countless others. And whereas in March, thousands of programs and events highlight the many contributions of women, including in Anchorage, the Alaska Women's Hall of Fame, which held its induction ceremony on Friday, February 28, 2014. and the Athena Society, which will be celebrating the reception of its new inductees on March 31st, 2014. And whereas the 2014 National Women's History Month theme, celebrating women of character, courage, and commitment, similarly honors the often unrecognized determination and tenacity of women throughout our country, community, and city. Now, therefore, be it resolved that March 2014 is recognized Anchorage, Alaska's National Women's History Month, passed and approved by the Anchorage Assembly this 11th day of March 2014.
Thank you. I brought a couple of my co-commissioners with me. We do have a brief presentation. Ladies and gentlemen of the Assembly, the Anchorage Women's Commission has had the opportunity to study issues that are critical to women in our community, and we are pleased to have been able to advise both the Mayor's Office and the Assembly with regards to issues that we believe that are important to women in our community in our 2013 annual report. This past year, the Women's Commission has examined the topic of foster care. We were able to collect information in order to make some recommendations regarding some solutions that enabled facilitation of some group discussions regarding foster care improvements. On November 12th, 2013, the Anchorage Women's Commission hosted an event of discussion, learning, and planning. We held roundtable discussions which allowed for the collection of information from various community organizations sharing in the mission to improve the foster care system. We have observed a 17% increase in foster care placements in the Anchorage area, and that was concerning for our commission this past year. In addition, the Anchorage Women's Commission identified the need to support funding for the Anchorage Domestic Violence Project as funding streams are ending. However, the need for centralized database and resource booklets in order to keep our families healthy continue. The commissioners have received a resolution recognizing the National Women's History Month in Anchorage, and we have actively participated in the Choose Respect events throughout Anchorage in 2013. For 2014, the Anchorage Women's Commission holds on to its priorities that we hold for 2013 or held for 2013, and we plan to develop and review other priority proposals and funding priorities as needed for 2014. We look forward to serving this body and the Mayor's Office in this upcoming year. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Honeman?
Well, first of all, I want to thank you and your fellow co-commissioners for serving. This was one of the commissions that not too long ago was actually being talked about as about not having much interest. And so I'm thankful that you have stepped forward and are adding a strong voice to our community on issues in Anchorage pertaining specifically to the women's and concern of the women in Anchorage. And so I laud you for the outreach for and the dialogue about fostering and as well as the domestic violence intervention program. So thank you very much, and look forward to hearing more from you.
All right, thank you.
Ms. Johnston?
I, too, would like to say thank you. Commissions come and go, and sometimes there's many points in a commission's life when they try to figure out what their purpose is. And it's nice to see that you folks have developed your purpose and are, focused on a mission. And thank you very much.
Ms. Gray-Jackson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to say thank you for your work, and it's a no-brainer to figure out what the Women's Commission's purpose is. So I just, again, thank you for all your hard work, and I'm glad that you are still existent. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And congratulations.
Thanks.
We now have before us item 9E3.
Yeah, move to accept.
Second.
Okay. We got a motion and a second to accept. Please vote. That motion carries unanimously. We have now before us item 14B, AO number 30, an ordinance amending the zoning map and approving the rezoning of approximately 2 acres from PLI, Public Lands Institutions, a district to R3 SL. Thank you. This item is before us for public testimony. Anyone to testify? Anyone at all? Seeing, hearing none, this item is before the body for action. Okay, we got a motion and a second. No one in the queue. Please vote. That item carries unanimously. We now have before us item 14C, AO number 37, an ordinance authorizing disposal of municipal interest in lands via vacations of portions of easements no longer required on the south 1/3 of the east 1/2 of Lot 3, Block 11, on the east 1/2 of Lot 2, Block 11, on the west 1/3 of the north 1/2. Thank you. This item is before the body for testimony. Anyone to testify? Anyone at all? Seeing, hearing none, this item is before the body for action.
Move to approve.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. No one in the queue, please vote. Motion carries unanimously. We have before us item 14D, AO number 35, an ordinance to the Anchorage Municipal Assembly amending Anchorage Municipal Code Section 2.35.025 to reauthorize delegation of downtown parking enforcement to the Anchorage Community Development Authority. This item is before the body for public testimony. Anyone to testify? Anyone at all? Seeing, hearing none, this item is before the body for action.
Move to approve.
Second.
Mr. Flynn.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate you bringing this forward and consulting with me about it. I would like to take a moment to thank ACDA. I think they've done a reasonably good job at managing this. We were taking kind of a chance, frankly, by asking them to step into this role that things might be a little bit heavy-handed. I think they've been appropriately judicious. Not perfect. I noticed them ticketing somebody whose car was in a parking spot because of an accident while he was inside an establishment filling out the paperwork. But on the whole, they've done a pretty good job, and I commend them. And the fact that nobody's here to tar and feather us is testament to their excellent work. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Training.
Mr. Chairman, I think they've done a good job, but I want to thank Darrell Hess from the Ombudsman Office, because believe me, if they ticket somebody, the individual thinks it might be incorrect, Darrell Hess gets the first call. He's worked out numerous problems with them, and it's working its way it should now. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Honeman.
And I do want to commend the ACDA and the Easy Park staff. I know Scott Willis, their ops supervisor, runs a pretty good crew, and in spite of some rather harsh both weather and sometimes people not really happy about enforcement of silly things like a meter, parking meter. But very good job by all. Thank you.
Thank you. Please vote. That motion carries unanimously.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Since we don't have anything to help the public track, if there's not any specific amount of details, could we at least continue to read through so that the public knows what we're talking about?
We're reading everything that's got language. When we're getting to a lot of that, it's just North Block. That's when Mr. Flynn is saying.
And I understand that. I just want to make sure the public knows we're not trying to short shift them a little bit here. Thank you.
We now, yes. We now have before us item 14E, AO number 36, an ordinance of the municipality of Anchorage, Alaska, authorizing and providing for the issuance of not to exceed $95 million in aggregate principal amount of tax anticipation notes, fixing certain details of said notes, providing for the form and manner of sale and said notes, pledging the receipts from Valorum property taxes to be collected during year 2014 and the full faith and credit of the payment thereof, and delegating certain matters to the chief fiscal officer in connection with the sale or placement of the notes. This item is before us for public testimony. Anyone to testify? Anyone at all? Hearing none, testimony is closed. This item is before the body.
Move to approve.
Mr. Starr.
Well, I like that term Ms. Gray Jackson used earlier, to shout out to Ms. Mahoney. Kind of went out of her way again today to explain what this does and how it's effective use of cash flow. So it's not to be scared off. We're not borrowing $95 million, anything more than just to cover until the taxes are collected. So the idea that this is a good, effective way of cash management, I think, is right. And she spent, I think, last week out shopping the notes and got a pretty good bargain for it. So I urge approval.
Forget. Mr. Flynn.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I concur this is excellent cash management. However, I was surprised when looking through the see that we don't have an estimate for the amount of interest income that we anticipate earning on this, which we have had in years past. Do we have anybody here who can give us a, Ross, can you give us a rough number? I know it's hard to tell exactly, but.
Mr. Chairman, I'm Ross Griswold, Public Finance and Investments Manager. Mr. Chairman, Mr. Flynn, you're correct. In the past, a few years back, we could earn a net income basically on the issuance of these. Last year, it was a net cost to the municipality, but it still makes economic sense to do it while we keep $95 million invested in longer-term investments in fixed income. The market volatility last year, month after month, it was a spike up or a spike down throughout the whole year. And the fact that we held these for a very short time frame, I think it was issued in March and called in September. So there was most of the spikes were down during that period. So there was a net cost to us on a cash flow basis, but still it was economically better off to do that.
And do you have an estimate for this year? I mean, or are you building a net zero for this year's budget in terms of cash flow?
I expect basically a net zero estimate for that this year. The cost of funds for these notes for the 6 months again this year is estimated at 0.69%.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's all I had.
Thank you. Mr. Trombley?
I understand that this is to bridge the gap before the tax. I'm right over here. Before the tax dollars come in. If we didn't do this, the $95 million would come from where? Just the cash pool, or?
Well, yes, it would come from the general cash pool.
Right.
And most of our money is in what we call the municipal cash pool,
right,
which is managed by 3 external investment managers. And there's three different portfolios there. And we would then be taking from the contingency portfolio and requiring that manager to liquidate fixed income investments to supplement our cash flow needs.
So as a general rule, aside from the last time we did this and there's a loss of money, the interest incurred on paying this back is less than what we earn by keeping that $95 million in the cash pool. Is that correct? So the interest earned on the $95 million cash flow is greater than the interest that we have to pay.
Generally speaking, that would be
okay.
That's the plan.
I got you. Generally, and is that a generally speaking, interest is money's earned as opposed to loss as a rule, as a historical trend, I should say.
We like it to be that way.
Right, but what's the reality? Is it a historical trend? Is it?
As Mr. Chairman, Mr. Trombley, like I mentioned a moment ago, 3, 4, and 5 years ago when interest rates were in a normal, a more normal interest rate environment, right. we could, because since we're borrowing very short for a 6-month period of time, and we're keeping that in this case, $95 million invested over in longer duration investments in that contingency portfolio, generally speaking, we're going to make more money keeping those investments there and not liquidating them.
Understand.
And borrowing short term for 6 months.
Thank you.
Mr. Honeman?
Russ, just to recall for so that people can kind of understand, this is a practice that we've done many years for, we collect property taxes 2 times a year, June 15th and August 15th, correct?
Correct.
So this is basically borrowing short-term money to pay our bills until the tax monies come in to pay that note back.
Correct.
Is that pretty much simple?
Correct.
Okay.
Mr.
And this is something we do routinely. We've been doing.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Honeman, yes, you're right. We've done this past 8 or 9 years, and it's been a total success story for the most part. Well, total success story overall. As you know, the municipality begins paying its bills on the 1st of in January of each year. But yes, we do not collect our taxes for that calendar year or that fiscal year until June and August. And so this around April and May, we have a seasonal cash flow balance, and around May we hit that low point, and we borrow in March or April to cover it.
That's what I thought. Thank you.
Mr. Starr.
No, not for Ross. Thank you very much for being here. But I did want to speak generally to it. Ms. Mahoney also guided me, as Mr. Trombley, I noticed you cleaned your packet out, but page 161 and 160 have this spread concept that Mr. Flynn went down. And the trailing average for the BlackRock was, trailing average earnings was 1.45 for the previous 6 months. And so if you're taking at 0.69, there's the potential of a spread, but I give the administration credit for not counting on that. In years past, we've made some years millions of dollars on the spread just while we were keeping our cash flow current. So the idea that we would jeopardize even a simple return of 1.45% of return to take it into the cash pool kind of is the concept here. And the money's available, and I know with our AAA bond rating it helps. So again, it's a policy we've discussed every year, and the idea that we pledge the full faith and credit when you have $560 million in the bank or thereabouts, it's a good idea. So I think we should do it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Starr. Please vote. Motion carries unanimously. We have before us item 14F, AR 53, a resolution of the Municipality of Anchorage appropriating $840,000 from earnings within the MOA Trust Fund 730 for expert financial management and support services provided in the calendar year 2014. This item is before the body for public testimony. Anyone to testify? Anyone at all? Seeing, hearing none, testimony is closed. Items before the body. No one in the queue, please vote. That motion carries unanimously.
Mr. Chairman, be certain that we acknowledge the students in the audience before they run off. There's a bunch of them, and we're coming up on their 2-hour requirement.
Are they all from your area?
I hope so. I mean, we try to encourage them, but you know,
let's take a quick.
It's always fun to have them here.
Let's take a quick pause here. Mr. Starr has chosen to embarrass you, so come on up and introduce yourself.
Please come on down.
Please.
I know I've met a.
And there's no embarrassment to it. It's quite easy.
Come on.
Yep, come on up. Everybody, nobody gets a pass. I don't want to have to guard escort you up here. You're first, you go ahead. Show them how it's done.
No.
Name and school.
I'm from Diamond, and I'm Kayla Ziegler.
Diamond, I believe that's my school, Mr. Starr. Thank you. Yeah, here's another.
Gabrielle Agtrap O'Neill, Diamond High.
Thanks for coming. There you go. Hi.
My name is Isaac Fisher, and I represent AJ Diamond High School.
Awesome. Welcome. Hi.
Hi, my name is Tiffany Mason, and I'm a social work student at UAA.
Awesome.
Oh, thank you. Hi.
Hi, I'm Kaylee Nielsen, and also a social work student at UAA.
Hi.
Hello, I'm Cammie Adams, and I am a social work student at UAA.
And I just want to say that is the sister of my brother-in-law's girlfriend. I just thought that I'd embarrass you like that. So, such a small town.
There's a nice piece of trivia. Hi, how are you?
Hi. I'm Laura Souders. I go to Polaris K-12.
Awesome.
Well, thanks for coming.
Awesome.
How are you?
I'm good. I'm Timothy Sorensen. I'm from Chugiak High School.
Hey, Mr. Starr. Woohoo.
Save the best for last.
Thanks for, stay to the end. Thanks for coming, guys.
We're almost done.
We have before us AO 38, an ordinance amending Anchorage Municipal Code, Section 28.60.050, voting absentee by mail to allow public disclosure of absentee mailing addresses. This item is before the body for public testimony. Anyone to testify?
I'll let you go ahead.
I'll flip a coin. Good evening.
Good evening, through the chair to the Assembly. My name is Jim Stevens. I'm one of the members of the Election Commission, recently reappointed. The Election Commission met earlier, last week I believe it was, to consider this particular resolution that is before the body. And we had some good discussion, disclosures about how we felt, and we presented and drafted a resolution, and I believe that you all have copies of that. And so that resolution is before you, and it basically states the opinion of the Election Commission that this particular resolution that is before you is not really a good idea. And there have been suggestions that candidates need to be able to communicate with their constituents, even when they happen to be out of town. And the statement was made that an informed voter is a good voter. But it is our feeling that voters who are willing to apply for an absentee ballot while they're on vacation are already informed. They know who they are going to vote for, how they're going to vote on the propositions, and they do not need any additional information. Secondly, it is the consideration of the voting public when their information is deemed to be confidential, especially after the ruling was made in March of 2012 that this information would be confidential, that it would leave people with an uncomfortable feeling that people might have access to information revealing that they were not at their residence and their home would be vulnerable while they were away. So for these reasons, the Election Commission is suggesting that this not be an appropriate thing, to reverse this ruling to allow this to be public information.
Thank you. Just, Mr. Stevens, we have some questions. Ms. Johnston?
How long have you been on the commission?
I served 3 years, and I ended after the election of the mayor, after the tumultuous time, and I chose not to recommit for another period. And then I was just recently reappointed. So before I was an alternate, now I'm a full member.
Only reason I ask is because I remember the first time I ran, we had access to this data when I first ran for assembly. And I used the data to send information to voters. So I just was wondering if you'd had any experience when it was something that the municipality did.
The only information I have regarding that is the ruling that came from Dennis Weaver, the attorney, who looked at this information. It's mentioned in our resolution, Dennis Wheeler's consideration memorandum to the Assembly, that the absentee voter address where they're located is confidential, and disclosure is outweighed by the voters' privacy issues and interests.
Thank you.
Ms. Demboski?
Thank you, Mr. Stevens. My understanding, if this is implemented, it'll essentially revert to the way it was last year. Was there discussion about that at the commission when this was being talked about?
This particular resolution came to us after the process already began. As I understand it, when the attorney suggested this be reversed, that it was in fact reversed at that time.
Okay. let me ask a different question. Did the commission, when you were drafting this resolution, was part of the discussion the fact that someone can request through the State Division of Elections that their information be confidential? Was that discussed at the commission?
Let me understand the question, that the information from the state is different than what we have here. Is that basically what you're asking?
No, my understanding, I want to know if the commission considered the fact that someone through the State Division of Elections can request their information to stay confidential. Was that discussed at all during the...
Yes, of course. And that is listed on the absentee or the by mail ballot, where a person could request that to be confidential and held.
So I guess I'm a little confused, because if a person can request something to be confidential, but they choose not to, that would imply to me that they want more information.
What that is referring to is the physical address of the home. They have to have an address where they receive information, especially if they are voting absentee. There has to be a way for the city to mail out that information. But in the process, if that address is different than the resident, then they can hold that as confidential, the resident.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Trombley.
I think everybody up here agrees that protecting people's information is important. At the same time, though, as anybody up here who's ever, well, we've all run for office multiple times, you can get somebody's address, you can get how many times they voted in the last 4 elections, you can get whether or not they signed a petition, and you can filter data to who you want to talk to based on that. So what is it about getting their information as to where they've requested an absentee ballot? Why is that such a high safety concern when I can find out where you live, what your party registered is, how often you vote, what petitions you sign for? I don't really see the challenge with this compared to what's already out there.
If your address is here in Anchorage and you're living there in your home, that's fine. But if you are in Florida at the time of your voting and you receive an absentee ballot, a person with this information not being confidential would be able to go to that and realize you're not home and your home is vulnerable and could possibly be burglarized. That's one of the issues that came forward out of this discussion.
Okay, Madam Clerk, when someone's running for office and the campaign itself requests that information, obviously it's well known that that individual is probably running for office because they filed for office.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Vice Chairman, do you have any question for this gentleman?
No.
Because it sounds like we're getting debate.
No, you're right. Well, it is a question. I should probably ask when you sit down. I apologize. Thank you, Mr. Trainee.
Mr. Trainee.
Question, did you guys have the ability to look at Dennis Wheeler's opinion? And Dennis Wheeler was at the meeting with you, wasn't he?
Yes. Dennis Wheeler was present. We had the complete document that he had presented, and we read it word for word, the March 2012 document that was informing the Assembly at that time and the clerk's office, and that was the basis of our decision.
Since we've already started this process, sir, I think there are 600 people that requested a ballot. You understand that they requested thinking that information was going to be held private. Now, if this passes, that means the 600 people that put in will not know that their information is going to be released by the clerk's office. Under your understanding?
Correct. They will be under the assumption that that will be held confidential. If this body changes its direction on this resolution, then the clerk's office will have a dilemma on their hands.
Thank you, Mr. Stevens. Appreciate it.
Mr. Birch.
Hi, thanks for coming down and for joining the committee meeting last week. Have you seen the competing legal opinion, if you will, from that was generated today? I've asked Ms. Tucker to provide a copy for you.
No, I have not seen any of that.
Okay. Basically, I'll provide a copy here for you. But I guess my question is, from the inception of Anchorage, the municipality of Anchorage, in the mid-'70s to 2012, basically the public had access to this information. It only changed here 2 years ago. So this revision here, a one-sentence revision, basically restores the ability for public access to absentee voter information. One of the concerns is a potential for fraud, and there's actually been case law where I had 80 absentee ballots going to a single address, or just I think it was 80 going to 9 different addresses. And I guess the assumption there is, did you have an opportunity to discuss the merits of having more public disclosure on this absentee ballot information? Or was it just, were you basically centered on the legal opinion from Mr. Wheeler on the privacy aspects?
Well, initially, when it was brought to our attention that this resolution was coming before the Assembly, our commission discussed it without Dennis Wheeler, the attorney's information, and it was felt on the part of the commissioners that this really is a good idea to withhold that information, that it would be held confidential for those people who are out of town voting absentee.
Well, thank you. I'd encourage you to take a look at that.
I will.
Thanks.
Mr. Honeman.
The question from the commissioner has been asked and answered. I'll save mine for debate on the ordinance. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Stevens, I have no one else in the queue, but let me thank you immensely for what you do, the service rendered. I apologize that you do that and then get put into a situation like this, which isn't the most comfortable in the world, but you managed it very well. Thank you. We appreciate it.
All right, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Good evening. I'm Randy Radrick from downtown Anchorage. I would like to, first of all, just challenge the artificial solution that you're operating this election under. The belief is that if you were to send out the mailing address, you would be advising people that they're not, advising someone evil that the individual is not home. Instead, what we're doing under this current process this year and last year, we are sending out a list of the home addresses of those requesting absentee ballots, which gives someone a shopping list. I suggested that if you want to limit information, provide the mailing address so the voter can be contacted, because information may increase turnout, and that's one hugely important thing in running elections. You throw a party, somebody might ought to come. Our turnout in the city is terrible. This effort reduces turnout. Let's make turnout larger by having the absentee address out there, the absentee mailing address, and let's restrict the physical address to just the district and precinct. Then the campaign or whoever wants to send information can at least figure out which voter who has restricted their their home address, find out where they are, so we know whether they're in Chugiak or Anchorage or Eagle River. We have no information because the state allows you to suppress your residential address. If the city suppresses the mailing address, there is no way for these candidates to contact people to do anything at the individual level, and individual politics is the ultimate basis for our process. Furthermore, Kevin Clarkson prepared an opinion on this situation and suggests that this law, that the opinion of Mr. Wheeler is largely predicated on a fish and game situation where folks who were involved in a wolf hunt wanted to have their addresses suppressed so that individuals who were threatening them could not find them. I don't think any of our voters are being threatened about the right to vote.
I encourage you to adopt the change back to what we've had for the entirety of this municipality's history, with the exception of the last election. Thank you.
Mr. Harleman?
Mr. Riedrich, so is my understanding, I'm just reading the email for the first time. It's addressed to you from the private attorneys at law. So did you commission this review from an attorney? Okay. And fair statement that that the municipal elections are nonpartisan?
Yes.
Okay. And you were previously the Republican Party chair of Alaska, state of Alaska?
And I've also previously had a job in the city.
Okay. Thank you.
Ms. Johnston?
So what you're suggesting is we do precinct and mailing address and suppress residential address.
If they're concerned about privacy, I think that's the ultimate answer, to allow the voter to be contacted and to not disclose where the vacant home may be. Now, many of our voters are actually home. Others are getting their mail at work. Others are getting their mail at some other location. So the mailing address is the preferred address to contact most of our voters. And if it's at home, that's wonderful. If it's not, let's make sure that our campaigns have access to it.
So in the state of Alaska, do they do both, or just?
State of Alaska provides both.
Both mailing and resident. And as far as voter fraud, if you had 5 voters from a P.O. box, it's no different than having 5 voters from a residence.
That is true. That may be proper.
And when you say mailing address, so then you have the issue of people that are on vacation. You're suggesting just the mailing address, and maybe they get their mail forwarded. Is that what I'm hearing?
I'm sorry, restate that.
When you're looking for the mailing address, and if somebody is, so that is the mailing address that the clerk gets to send the ballot to?
Yes, that is the request on the ballot application, which is sent into the clerk. It may be a work address for somebody at a temporary work location. It may be the address of a family member that they're taking care of. It may be someone fortunate enough to be at a vacation location.
And then as far as, you're a high-tech guy. There's a lot that we can discover on the internet, correct? And
there's an immense amount of information out there.
So if you have the name, you could get the mailing address of their residential mailing address, but maybe not where they are currently located when they're looking for an absentee ballot.
I think we could say that you might be able to get the residential address. Their preferred mailing address gets to be a much lower likelihood, and the address to which they want something sent to temporarily is a truly unique event.
And then any way of finding out people's emails?
You can get email lists, but that's a whole nother enterprise, and I didn't consider that to be part of this endeavor, because the city does not send ballots to on an email basis as yet.
Okay. Thank you.
No other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time.
Mm-hmm. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Phil Isley, and I was here not too long ago talking to you about moving the election. And I saw this on the ballot and or on the agenda tonight, and it kind of surprised me, because you're looking for ways to get more people involved and ways to get a bigger turnout. And I'm sitting back over here going through my APOC forms on my computer that's all secure. I filed my PFD off my computer. When I want to find something out, I can go to eBay, I can read about it. Not only can I read about the product, but I can read about the seller. I do my banking over the internet, and I pay my credit cards over the internet. And if you want to have absentee ballots, why can't you have something My Alaska, where the individual sets up an account and he can go into his account and he can read about the candidates and he can read about the bond issues and he can make a decision, and he can even stop in the middle of it and decide, I'll wait on this one a while, and resume later and go back, and when it's time for the election, he can punch the button and his vote's there. If we can do all these other things by computer, and the majority of people under 30 do all that stuff. I've worked with people under 30, and you ask them a question, and if they don't know the answer, they Google it. They go to YouTube. In fact, they've got me doing that, and if I want to work on my truck or something, I go to the internet. I go to YouTube. Shows me how to do it. Any questions I have, I can go there. If you want to be progressive and you're really serious about having more people participate in your elections, you need to move into this century and find a way where people can set up their accounts and vote over the internet. It's pretty secure right now. If I can get my PFD through it, and I can do my banking through it, and I can order things through it, it's got to be pretty safe and reliable. That's all I got.
Thank you. Anyone else? Anyone at all? Seeing, hearing none, public testimony is closed. This item is before the body.
Move to approve.
Second.
Mr. Trombley?
Madam Clerk, if this passes, can anybody who's not a candidate call in and say, I would like every absentee, every address of somebody who you sent an absentee ballot to, if they're not running for office?
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Starr?
Well, I appreciated those folks, and I put a disclosure at the committee meeting that I'm up for re-election, of course, and I represent the military bases, and it's challenging to get information to the folks that are deployed, but they vote. I'm surprised. I'm an active user of this process and this program, and I've never had one that has contacted me, and Mr. Isley, most of what I provide them is a way to contact me or provide data for me electronically. So my challenge is timing. I could easily, and I do, broadcast mailer cards out to the last known address or the registered address, but if they're on a 9, 10-month, 11-month deployment, oftentimes my information gets to them late. But if I see a current request for a ballot, I can ballot chase that, and that's not a derogatory term. It's done in a good spirit of saying, hey, I want you to educate. I don't want you to mark my box or anybody else's box until you know who we are. So my experience has been that it's appropriately used. I'm not stalking anybody. I don't care about their residence that I can already get online or from other form. But I think it errs on the side, from my perspective, on being able to communicate clearly and provide an educated voter. And particularly with my representation on the military bases, it's a valid point. And I just think that we're going a little bit too far on that. And so I could probably provide some examples where people are calling me, asking me for information, and I'd easily mail it to them. But by far, it's far easier to get the data and chase the ballot. Thank you.
Mr. Honeman?
Well, I think Mr. Trombley stated eloquently that having all of us having run for office in the past at one time or another, or currently, and you're right, Mr. Starr, it is chasing the ballot, trying to figure out where they're at. And I've long been a proponent of trying to figure out a way. I think Mr. Isley hit upon something where you can get into a secured electronic setup where you're not necessarily, the campaigns aren't necessarily trying to determine where they're physically at that moment, but they're getting information to their constituent by district. I wouldn't have a problem with that. I think that's likely the better answer. I'm uncomfortable with this for a couple of reasons, and one is we already do have people that, I think it's a fair statement to say that people that sign up to vote absentee are probably those that are super voters that are committed and pretty well know which direction they're going. So I'm not sure that we're solving anything at this particular time at this election. So I'd feel more comfortable if we had more input from the community rather than making a shoot from the hip issue here. And I've said this last go around when we had the voting, and I saw which way it was heading, and I'll say it again. And I'm not meaning to be disrespectful by any means. Our charter spells out very clearly, and I know for the benefit of our colleagues, you've heard me say it before, but we're nonpartisan. And you got the past chair of the Alaska Republican Party coming and saying, we really need this. To me, it seems like you just want the parties to have a way to chase it rather than the campaigns. And I think we're getting too far into that, and I'm not comfortable with it this time. So I'm voting no. Thank you.
Mr. Trainee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm a no vote on this because, quite frankly, we're in the middle of election. If this was such a good idea, then it should have come to us in December or January before the election began. Let me ask the clerk. Madam Clerk, how many people do we have that requested a ballot right now, an absentee ballot? 600 or more?
I honestly, if you're not going to release absentee data, sorry to interrupt here, but I wouldn't even release that. If we're not giving out information as relates to absentee ballots, then let's not. So,
Mr. Chairman, it's a valid question. I'm asking the clerk how many people have put in for an absentee ballot. Simple.
Your question, Mr. Trainee, is public knowledge, so.
Madam Clerk?
Through the chair, Mr. Trainee, I think earlier this week or last week, we had received 600 and mailed approximately 600 applications for absentee ballots.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. And Mr. Chairman, when we started this process, these people expected a level of privacy that our state constitution guarantees. Unlike any other state constitution, ours has the right to privacy. And these people put in for a ballot not expecting the information on where that was being sent to be divulged to anybody. To do it now doesn't make any sense. If you want to do this, bring it back after election, and then let's look at it. Or before the election, not in the middle of an election. And I think if we ask our assembly attorney, she might have some personal view on this, or at least professional view. Julia, when's the time to do something like this, before or after or in the middle of an election?
Mr. Trainee, through the chair, I'll answer a different question.
Okay.
And that question is that I think without Mr. Wheeler being here, you have an opinion that was issued, reviewed, questions were asked of Mr. Wheeler about this in an open work session, and then when Mr. Wheeler is not here on the eve of an assembly meeting, you have outside retained counsel coming in and giving you a different opinion. And there just isn't enough time to have any kind of independent review. And so from my standpoint, I think that if there are serious legal questions here, which I think there are, then it may behoove the Assembly to wait until Mr. Wheeler can respond rather than risking acting outside legal parameters.
Thank you, Julia. Mr. Chairman, to continue for just a few seconds. Mr. Wheeler gave us a good legal opinion. It's well thought out legal opinion. It was given to us timely, and I thought Jennifer was giving me time. Anyway, we need to not vote for this and to tell the sponsor, bring this back after election. Because my concern is, like I said, we've got 600 people that have put in for their ballot expecting that information would be protected. Now in the middle of the game we want to change it, say, oh, we were only kidding. We'll release information to the public. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Johnston.
I have a question for the clerk. When the absentee ballots went out, is there something on it that says that their residential information or their mailing address is confidential?
Through the chair, Ms. Johnston, that information is not on the clerk's application for an absentee ballot. It is my understanding that there are a number of people who, through the state of Alaska, have indicated that their residential address is confidential.
And so we don't know what that list is. We couldn't cross-check it, or how difficult is to cross-check ours with the state of Alaska?
Well, we check every one with the
Right,
state of Alaska.
right, because you checked, so it would be on there when you looked.
Ultimately, we do check that data. That's correct.
So the ones, what I'm trying to work through, Mr. Trainee, is the state allows this, and the way that you don't, your mailing address is kept private is if you request that. Am I correct? That you request to keep your mailing address private, is that correct?
Residential.
Residential, but not mailing. Mailing is not. So with the state, your mailing address is not private.
I don't know the answer to that.
I don't think, I know that when I ran for state office that you got the addresses of the absentee ballot.
If your residential address and your mailing address are the same, and you've said your residential address is confidential, your mailing address.
Right, would be, but your mailing address is not confidential with the state.
It may be if you check the box.
If you check the box, but otherwise, I'm seriously just trying to work my way through two conflicting legal opinions. And I'm trying to think of what we've said to the 600 folks so far as confidentiality. Then the only thing one thing I can say is if they're super voters, and last year was the first year we didn't do it. Am I correct? Or 2 years ago? How many?
Mr. Wheeler's opinion was issued in March of 2012.
12, so it's been a couple years. But before that, we did it as a standard practice.
I do not know the answer.
Yeah, I mean, I know when I ran, we did it. So I'm just trying to, you're saying that we're releasing something that we have no right to release, and the state releases it. And then I'm just looking to see if this passes. I know the effect onto the clerk's office is the time, as far as getting those 600 mailing addresses to whoever requested. I understand that. But if we are breaching the trust of the voters is what I'm trying to figure out. Because where have we said that we're not going to be doing this?
Through the chair, Ms. Johnson, I think you'd have to check with Mr. Wheeler on that question. I'm not going to be able to give you an opinion on whether or not you're breaching the trust of the people that have applied. If they've relied on the ordinance as you passed it in January, that would be your question to him.
The ordinance that we passed in January?
Yes, you passed this change to Title 28 on January 14th.
Yeah, okay. I think I'm quickly becoming Debbie Osiander. I'm actually quite flummoxed right now because, and so, yeah, I'll let others speak.
Okay. Mr. Birch?
Well, I brought this forward because of my interest in restoring a practice that has been the case here in this municipality for 36 years, up until the last election, when this information was hidden from the public. This is about public confidence and transparency. There is a public interest in knowing where absentee ballots are directed. As has been mentioned earlier, the state of Alaska has a provision if somebody wants to, we operate off the state of Alaska's voter registration database, and if somebody is interested in confidentiality, they can specifically request that through the state of Alaska, and as the clerks indicated, that is reflected here locally. This basically restores what has been past practice, certainly in my prior elections and the elections of many of those who are seated in this body. So what we are talking about here is basically having an informed electorate and making sure that information is available to folks that are voting on an absentee basis, and I would encourage a yes vote. Thank you.
Mr. Trainee.
25th of March, so our esteemed Assembly City Attorney can be here, because Mr. Wheeler, as Julia pointed out, is not here. And he gave us a legal opinion, and we passed an ordinance in January predicated upon that. If we're going to change that, we need to have Mr. Wheeler here, sir. So that's my motion to move this to the 25th, so Mr. Wheeler's here.
Second.
Okay, we got a motion and a second to postpone this till the 25th. Any discussion on the motion?
I'd speak against postponement. I think we need to take this up this evening so it can be effective this year. Thank you.
Anyone else? Mr. Steele?
Mr. Chairman, as somebody running for election, I relied upon the information that it was not going to be released and staffed accordingly. And it seems to me this close to the election to change the rules of the election is not appropriate.
Anyone else? Please vote on the motion to postpone till March the 25th. Has everyone voted?
No, Ms. Johnston.
Flexed, aren't you? Here, I'll deal for you. Do the right thing.
Mr. Chair, I'm going to read the vote into the record. This is our first non-unanimous vote tonight, and we don't have our screens up for the public. So on the vote to postpone until March 25th, Mr. Birch, no. Ms. Demboski, no. Mr. Steele, yes. Mr. Starr, yes. Mr. Flynn, yes. Mr. Trombley, yes. Mr. Hall, yes. Ms. Gray-Jackson, yes. Ms. Johnston, yes. Mr. Honeman, yes. Mr. Trainee, yes. The motion carries.
Very well. This item will be carried over to March the 25th. We now have before us item 14H, AO number 39, an ordinance of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly dedicating certain municipal land identified as parcels 006-401-03-000 and 006-401-04-000, Lot 1 and Lot 2, Muldoon Estates, located at 1301 Muldoon Road for permanent public park and recreational purposes. This item is before the body for public testimony. Anyone to testify? Anyone at all?
I'm back again, and I have questions regarding this motion. The lots 1 and 2, are they PLI now?
I don't know. Mr. Vikalis, you know the answer, Mr. Trombley?
I do not believe they are, sir.
They're not.
Okay, if you vote and do this, you're going to create the same problem you have with the previous motion. It's been 20 years since the municipality took over the property on Roosevelt Drive, and it's still not zoned as it should be, as the code calls for PLI. And it was just postponed. I understand there's technical problems with it. But before you get into this one, let's not take 20 years to get it resolved with this property. If you're going to designate it as permanent park, public park and recreational, make it mandatory that it be changed to PLI as soon as the municipality can do it. Why take 20 years and hear it 3 or 4 or 5 times? And again, Lions Clubs are for parks and recreations throughout. Thank you very much.
Mr. Honeman?
I just wanted to thank you for coming back up and bringing the attention to us. And you're right. There was, as you say, perhaps there was a miss, for lack of better terms, and according to the title. If it weren't for the title that cannot be changed tonight, we would have corrected the 20-year problem that you've been experiencing over in Spenard. There are 2 things to think about. One is the neighbors in your community near the clubhouse, when there was the attempt to rebuild on the property, had some concerns, and that's where we saw some people kind of pushing back a bit. I will tell you, at this particular parcel, overwhelmingly for over 6 to 8 years that I am aware of, been resolution after resolution, proclamation, parties, summer picnics right there on those parts. The very parcel 3, the very back parcel, is PLI for park, and the front portion is public lands, but it wasn't designated for park, and the front portion was initially intended perhaps to be developed and sold as commercial property. But it's the community spoken loud and clear, and I thank you for bringing it up, because you're right. There was a miss over in your neighborhood, and we're trying to make sure it doesn't get missed here. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else? Anyone at all? Seeing, hearing none, public testimony is closed. Items before the body.
Move to approve.
Second.
Mr. Chairman, this is an item that the community has wanted, at least Mr. Honeman and I's community has wanted for many, many years. I know that in the past we've discussed waiting for the East Anchorage District Plan to be completed in order before we dedicate this as parkland. But it's clear the will of the community is there. My guess is that when the plan comes before us, it's going to be shown as the community wants it to be a designated park. And really, what we're doing with this is we're going to send a policy statement to the community and to the makers and to the Planning and Zoning Commission that this will be a designated park. Anybody who goes down Muldoon sees that at this time Muldoon isn't very attractive. There's extremely high density housing. There's a lot of commercial, and the community says we don't want that anymore. We'd like some open green spaces. The back section, 1/3 is already designated parkland. The middle section, I believe, is residential. But if you talk to builders, it doesn't pencil out to build anything there because the land isn't necessarily good for building. You'd have to bring in too much backfill in order to make it happen. The front section is currently commercial. We have, I believe, $1.5 million in Parks and Rec right now for the development of the park. And I know that there's the issue of the contamination from the greenhouse, but this being designated as a park doesn't inhibit or prevent that from still going forward. We're just making a statement as a body and as a community what we want this to be. So I would appreciate the support of the rest of the members on the body, as I know we always generally try to support what other parts of town we represent, or other colleagues represent, and I would appreciate that support.
Mr. Steele.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I guess I would just ask Mr. Trombley, doesn't it make more sense to let the planning process proceed? And aren't we getting the cart before the horse, changing the zoning before the plan?
Well, no, like I said, Mr. Steele, there's been, I don't know, Mr. Honeman, how many resolutions that they want this to be a park? I mean, it's Scenic Foothills, Russian Jack, Northeast Community Council. We're not getting the cart before the horse because the community's already spoken that this is what they want it to be. We don't have to wait for the plan to come out to tell us that this is what it's going to be. Besides, even if the plan comes out and says, no, this is going to stay residential or the front section is going to stay commercial, this body can still make the decision and the determination that we're actually going to make it a park anyway. So regardless of what the plan says, we can still do as a body what we want.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
May I answer a little bit? It seems to me in planning, what you do is you designate what you're going to do and then you zone. Zoning always comes after the plan. And it only takes one. The Uri Park comment was it was one neighbor that was concerned. Later, after everybody got up in an uproar, there were more. But it just seems, I don't know why we need to do it in a big hurry, but if that's the will of the body, great.
Mr. Starr.
Well, I appreciate district leadership when it comes to the knowledge base of our area. And I think we're in a unique position as assembly members to be sort of that central point of exchange. We oftentimes work the community council networks at a level greater than the administration. We have a lot of the bodies that have their designations, parks and rec boards and advisory boards inside their mandate. It does advise them that they're advisory to us. So the idea that we have to wait for their processes or send a clear message downhill, I've seen it go both ways. When I served on planning and zoning, we used to show up at the planning and zoning meetings and there'd be a letter from the mayor at my chair saying, I would like to see this happen. And it would be interesting because we bypass public process from the mayor's office on down. In this particular case, I think it is a direct and appropriate, and I'll use the word influence. I think we are sending the message that this is the land use pattern that we want to see for that area, and we have to provide that leadership. I think Mr. Trombley and Mr. Honeman are doing that, and when you start to take that down, and Ms. Demboski and I in raw and undeveloped lands have to take that leadership role so that the community gets it. They understand what the intentions are, and we're the messenger for that. Duly, our elected representative position is just that, is to speak up and make policy like this. So I'm supportive of it. I don't think anything has been rushed by any means. I've heard the conversation now for many, many years, and the leadership role that we have potentially a chance to influence those policies on down is a positive thing in this case. People can start to develop around it, new housing choices, new commerce centers, the walkable community, the town center. It all gels. This piece is vital, and I appreciate Mr. Trombley and Mr. Honeman in bringing it now. Thank you.
Ms. Johnston?
Yes, could I have Mr. Rada and I should have just had a senior moment. Real Estate Services up here, please. Sorry. These first 60 years are rough.
Miss Osiander never forgot names.
I know. I just can't, seriously, I would, poor replacement. So, as Mr. Wada knows, I'm going through this process in the hillside, and what we're doing is I'm going through the community councils and getting their list of land that they want dedicated, and then it goes to Mr. Wada and myself, and then he shares it with Real Estate Services, and we look to the intent of the municipality and where it stands. Is that correct? Within the municipal land bank. Is that correct?
That's correct, through the chair, Ms. Johnston. But ultimately, when the final list, as we've been accumulating over the course of quite a long time, that list will be prepared. We will review it. We will work with Real Estate Services, and ultimately the list goes to the Parks and Recreation Commission before it goes any further. And once that public testimony, because that will be a public hearing on the disposition of those parcels, then at that time, whatever the resolution is from the commission would come back, and that would be the next step.
And that being said, this body, the Parks and Rec Commission, is advisory, and as Mr. Trombley has said, we also set policy. So there might be Parks and Rec Commission and I might disagree, but that will come when we go through the legislative process. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so on this parcel, because I'm a strong proponent of parks, on this parcel we have remediation issues. Is that correct?
Through the chair, Tammy Oswald, correct.
And have you started to address those remediation issues?
Yes, we have.
And what have you done so far?
We've identified the contamination, and we have an RFP out on the street to clean it up, start the process to clean it up.
And currently, we had 2 legislative grants for this parcel. Is that correct?
Through the chair, Ms. Johnston, there are 2 legislative grants. 2 years ago, there was a $1 million legislative grant, and then last year, a $500,000 legislative grant.
In the remediation, are these grants being used for the remediation, or are we using other funds?
We are not using those funds. We're using others.
And if we acted on this evening, whose responsibility and how would the remediation be paid? And if the RFP, if the bid comes back and it's, say, $1 million, how are we going to address it?
If I may address that, that's a policy decision for the mayor to make, because it could be funded from RES, or I suppose it could be funded out of the Parks and Rec service area. However, I do know that there's no monies available for the remediation in the Parks and Rec service area at this time, none identified. There is, however, in the RES budget.
So at this point, the $1.5 million would still be used to create the park. Is that correct? It would. I mean, there would not be an opportunity for the remediation to take any of those funds.
My understanding, the intent of the use of the legislative grants, the $1 million was for development, and the $500,000 was for a master plan and subsequent development.
Okay. So if there were any, because my concern is the parks budget, if there are cost overruns with the remediation and we act on this, would there be a possibility it would come out of the parks budget?
I think I stated that.
That there's no funds?
What I stated was that there's no funds identified in the Parks and Rec budget for cleanup of this site. There is, however, funds identified in the RES.
Okay.
The problem you have is the RES site is area-wide, Parks and Rec is specific.
Okay. So if we do this, there's two things we've done. We've basically set policy, but we have skipped two public processes. Am I correct? The one being the East Side plan, and the other being Parks and Rec Commission.
If I may, there's actually several processes. One is undergoing right now, and that's the Northeast Anchorage Plan.
Mm-hmm.
The Northeast Anchorage Plan determines density of parks. That's only one thing. I mean, they look at everything. But if you're dealing with just parks, they certainly look at densities of parks in that area. They look at what the needs are. They actually look at what the desires are. And they also look at possible placements of parks. Once they make their determination, and if the determination and recommendation is that Northeast Anchorage is underserved on parks, and that the two lots that's in question that have not been dedicated, and as was pointed out, one is basically, I believe, commercial, the front lot next to Muldoon Road, the middle lot is residential. If it's determined that that is more useful as a park, those two lots, then that will be recommended. If that's the case, then the next step would be to go and, again, go through the process with the Parks and Rec Commission to basically validate and determine the nature of the type of park, and also come up with a recommendation. And as you pointed out so clearly, it is advisory. However, that is the process. And by following the process, I mean, we've gone through everything, and whatever the outcome is, the outcome is. And obviously, you as the legislative body can make the final determination, regardless of what the mayor's recommendation is or not. But the mayor would also input his recommendation to you based on these two bits of information.
But I guess my last question is just the zoning of the parcels, one being industrial, one being residential. Is there any problem with us setting this policy statement without addressing the zoning first?
I guess I'm not sure I totally understand the question, but we spent an awful lot of time on this, and I know that Mr. Trombley did say that. When this was brought to the body before, and we discussed this in great detail, there was an awful lot of information that was provided at that time, but not the least of which was how the property was acquired to begin with. The property was acquired through the previous administration basically by getting a loan in part from ML&P. ML&P floated the loan to be able to complete the purchase of the entire parcel, which included 3 different lots. And as a result of that, the back third was designated and dedicated at that time as a park. The remaining 2 was designated as we have just stated. As you remember, it came back to you a couple of years ago that we needed to pay ML&P back because of the RCA concerns. The RCA was very concerned because they were getting no value whatsoever of the money that they loaned to the municipality. So you, as a body, based on the recommendation of the administration, agreed to go ahead and make ML&P whole by about, I think it was 3.1, 3.2 million, something like that, if I remember correctly, by taking it out of the general fund. Also, I think you were apprised at the time, when we were discussing this, that the intent back then was that front portion, the portion closest to Muldoon Road, should be used as the highest and best use, which was commercial. The current mayor never decided one way or the other to you, but all this was brought out to you as to how this all developed. Then, when this finally came before the legislative body, the body basically said, well, let's defer until the plan. And so the administration felt that that would be the proper process, regardless of what the outcome is. The process is the Northeast Anchorage Plan, Parks and Rec, and then to the administration, then to the assembly for final disposition. And that's what the administration currently feels is the best way, and I've been asked to make that on the record, that the administration feels strongly that we should follow the process, regardless of what the outcome, but follow the process. Thank you.
That's kind of answering my question, but not really. But I understand. I mean, it's good to have that history, and we all, I think, some of us knew that we actually had made that commitment. I guess I'm more concerned about just the planning and zoning as far as changing the zoning and the public process. I mean, I understand what Mr. Trombley's doing, and he's trying to set a policy, and he and Mr. Hahnemann are saying, our people want this no matter what, and I understand that. But I also feel that there's no one here tonight from the Northeast community testifying on this. And I think it's, yeah, no, they have been here, but then that was when we came up with that compromise that we were going to do the Northeast community plan first. So I really would like to move to postpone this. I think I'm going to start by postponing it in 2 weeks, just to give Mr. Hahnemann and Mr. Trombley some time to actually get some public engagement. I prefer to postpone it till after it's gone through the process. But at least I'll start with 2 weeks, if I have a second.
Okay, we got a motion and a second to postpone for 2 weeks. Anybody to speak on the motion to postpone?
Yes. Yes, Mr. Chairman.
The second one was Mr. Birch.
And I'd like to speak just briefly, if I could.
Okay, Mr. Starr is ahead of you. I'll be right back to you, Mr. Horniman.
I was in the queue, but okay.
I understand, but we're talking on a different topic. Mr. Starr.
To postponement?
Yes, we're speaking on the postponement.
Mr. Vikalis did a good job of talking about history, and probably Ms. Johnston, Mr. Birch, and I have been around for most of that, including the appropriation and the request from the previous administration to purchase the land because it was going to go out for foreclosure. Every time we talk about it, the community speaks up. I don't know how much more clear policy statement we need to hear from the people we represent, but every time we do it. We also had all of that dialogue that occurred with the requirements to realign the creek and get that development jump-started over there. I don't know if you've driven over there, but we're well on our way to that plan. So the idea that we need to sort of take our time and be a little bit more prudent, I think, is part of why people criticize government for moving so slow. What are we now, 7, 8, 9 years? Then we also throw in the requirement of designated versus dedicated. Mr. Rod, I don't even want to bring you down designated parkland versus dedicated discussions, but it's time now, I think, to take the step that's so painful for folks that are process-driven and start to influence that process. I'm not inferring that there's anything wrong with it, but I think the message needs to be clearly sent from the leadership that gets elected. And I've watched it, and I think it does. It also sets a precedent for our area out in Chugiak, Eagle River, that leadership needs to take a little bit more. Otherwise, things like this will never get done. It'll take 7 or 8, 9, 10 years, multiple terms on the assembly, can't get it done. We're going to lose confidence and faith in those that we represent, and all across the district, not just in Mr. Trombley's here. So I don't think kicking it down the can is doing any good. I don't know that the argument about the reclamation process makes much sense to me. No matter what, we got to reclamate the product. We're not going to slow them down one way or the other. But the idea that we're taking the leadership role here, I think is still the right thing to do. So I don't think kicking it down the road. So no on postponement.
Mr. Horniman on the motion to postpone it.
Mr. Starr spoke fairly well about all the reasons why we shouldn't postpone this any longer. And we could pack the house. You want to bring in more people, we can do that. You've seen it before many times. And I think that's the concern that Mr. Starr spoke to very well. Literally, when this was discussed, and the community's been asking to get a seat at the process and get us to that point. And at every point, I've been told by members of the administration, get the 6 votes. Get the 6 votes. So, now's the time. We're either going to do it or we're not. And if you want, in 2 weeks, we'll come back and just fill the house with people saying we want the park. You're not going to hear any different story. It's not going to change. People want that area for the park. And I just ask for your indulgence. Thank you.
Anyone else on the motion to postpone? Mr. Birch?
I guess I'd be interested, through the chair to the administration, when do you anticipate having the East Side District Plan completed?
My understanding from the planning director is the end of August.
Mr. Chairman?
I guess I would respectfully request of the maker of the motion if we might be able to defer this to the point in time when we have the district plan completed. August?
We've got a motion on the floor, Mr. Birch, for 2 weeks.
Okay. I'm going to speak against that motion. I neglected to take into consideration the district plan. Thank you.
Mr. Birch, you can make a separate motion, but we can't change the motion on the floor.
Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else?
Just
Mr. Honeman?
I just want to say the district plan, just so everybody knows history as we're going down it, that East Side District Plan kept getting postponed. It was put in the budget, and it kept getting vetoed out by this administration, and it went on for 3 to 4 years. So we would already have this had that plan continued and gone on, and it just kept getting, again, kicked down the road. So we want to keep doing it, we will, but it speaks to what form of government, what leadership we have from our body. Thank you.
Anyone else on the Ms. Demboski?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll try to reserve many of my comments. I've done a lot of research on this particular, the history of this parcel, not to mention the funds that have been transferred round and around regarding this. And I think Mr. Birch raises a good point. In the AO, it refers to not only the blessing of P&Z, and of course that's not a technical term, but also the Parks and Rec Commission and the East Side District Plan, all of which have never happened. They're not complete. So I think when we're talking about dedicating, we're talking about a very, very expensive parcels of property, well over $3 million that we have used taxpayer money. And my research indicates, an AO right here in 2006, that actually had community support. It's AO number 2006-149S, which clearly delineates the front parcel will be used for commercial, the second parcel will be mixed residential, and the third parcel was dedicated as parkland, but clearly in here it says funds received from the sale of surplus property, lots 1 and 2, will be dedicated to repayment of the loan. And your communities have weighed in on this and they've blessed it. Back in 2006, Mr. Honeman, I know you're shaking your head, but that's it. That's the research and indicate that's what I found. So I'm not saying I'm against the park. All I'm saying is you can't reference things that have been done that haven't been done. And when we dedicate parkland, we're talking about taking $3 million of municipal assets and putting them into the government, generating no revenue off that. So I think it should be a deliberative process, and I think we should let the East Side District Plan, and I'm more than happy to say when that plan comes out, if the plan wants the whole thing to be a park, okay, but I think we're putting the cart before the horse here, just like Mr. Steele said. I mean, there's a process to dedicating parkland, especially contaminated land. And one thing to consider being in your district, right now we're taking a generally held asset by the municipality of Anchorage, by Real Estate Services, who's basically spearheading the charge on remediation. And we are going to transfer it to the Parks and Rec Department, which now your park service area could be solely responsible for the cost of that remediation. That could happen. And we don't even know what the cost is because we know there's contamination, but there's been no core samplings done. So we don't know how extensive it is. There could be a plume. We don't know. So I think while the intent is good, I think, well, some may argue yes, some may argue no. But I think just the data's not in yet. I mean, we need to go through the process. And like I said, I'm not speaking against the East Side District Plan or what comes out of that, but it's more appropriate of a process to go through the traditional route. I mean, I'm sorry. At the last meeting, what was in front of us was 2.5 acres, and in 10 minutes it changed to 15 acres. That's a substantial change. And I'm not willing to just on the fly take it hook, line, and sinker. That's why I think it's more appropriate to have an extensive process to vet out all these issues. Let's deal with the cleanup. Let's actually assess it and see what it is. I mean, I think it's a more responsible route. So I'll speak against postponement for 2 weeks because I think it's more appropriate to postpone it until, you said end of August when the East District plan should be done? So I think it would be more appropriate to postpone this to September 1st. That way P&Z can weigh in, the Parks Commission can weigh in. So I'll wait till we vote on this motion, and then I plan on making that second motion.
Please vote on the motion to postpone for 2 weeks. Madam Clerk, you want to read the vote?
Okay, the vote is on the motion to postpone for 2 weeks. Chris Birch, no. Amy Demboski, no. Tim Steele, yes. Bill Starr, no. Patrick Flynn, no. Adam Trombley, no. Ernie Hall, no. Elvi Gray Jackson, no. Jennifer Johnston, no. Paul Honeman, no. Dick Traney, no. The motion fails.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman?
Ms. Demboski.
I move to postpone this item till September 1st, 2014.
Okay, we got a motion and a second to post.
Speak to that.
Yes, sir.
Speak to
Find the queue first.
Mr. Starr.
Mr. Chairman, point of order. We don't meet on September 1st.
That's a valid point.
The first meeting in September. Thank you, Mr. Flynn.
September 9th.
Okay. Mr. Starr.
I don't think that, back to my earlier comments on this, one of the resolutions that you held up was a 2006 resolution. I will tell you the community was very angry that we did that, and we did it that way. It was if you wanted to see politics in play, it was this body. And I think the idea that 6 years, now we are 2014, nothing's really happened. There was some of the requirements to buy the land were to keep it from going into foreclosure. We had to capture it from the federal government. The interfund loan, we do that all the time. It wasn't inappropriate bookkeeping or anything like that. And again, all of our parks are public use parks. So the idea that somehow or another we're taking something that's held in the public trust and turning it into the public trust isn't a good argument for me. We're turning it into a park. And you drive that corridor and you look at it and it's distinctly absent of that. Plenty of bars, plenty of other businesses struggling, but we haven't done our share in this part of the community. And I'm a patient guy, but it's time to take some leadership here and to continually to kick it down the road and wait for an influenced plan. And that's what it is. Mr. Honeman is correct. The administration doesn't want it to come out. They delay it. That's not a hard concept. They plan work. They instruct their workforce. It's not to be overly critical. I don't know if it's deliberate. It's just not their priority. And it needs to be their priority soon. We've been patient enough on this body. So the idea that we can delay it another 6 months, I don't know. I think the idea that we influence the plans that are currently in the works and send a clear message, I think is going to be what's the right thing to do. And that's what I measure by. So that said, again, postponement for me doesn't work. It's time to move the topic.
Ms. Demboski.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I just want to go back. There's not one piece of legislation that this body's considered. There's three. One in 2006, one in 2009, and one in 2011. And the first two were ordinances. The last one was a resolution. So, to all of a sudden circumvent the process, like I said, there's already an existing 12-acre park there. And now we want to add another 15 acres to it, partially contaminated. There's multi-millions of dollars that essentially we, this body, by ordinance said, let's take a loan, let's borrow money from essentially every taxpayer in Anchorage. We're going to pay them back. This is our plan for paying them back. And now we're just like, never mind. To me, that's not good policy. And I think if the East District plan comes out and we have a plan and we remediate the contaminated lot and then, through the typical public process for dedicating parks, there's a community consensus through P&Z, through the Parks and Rec Commission, that this is how we need to go, then I would support it. But I'm not convinced that's what's going to happen, first of all, because, like I said, we still essentially owe the taxpayers multi-millions of dollars for this piece of property. That's my opinion. But like I said, I'm willing to be open to it, but I just want to see the process go forward the way the process would typically go forward. I feel like we really are putting the cart before the horse. So, Mr. Honeman, I'm not saying I'm not supporting this ultimately. I'm just saying I would like to have my ducks in a row before I do. Thank you.
Mr. Honeman? I don't want to go too far into it. Mr. Starr again spoke very clearly as to the issues and why we shouldn't postpone. And Ms. Demboski, I do appreciate and I do believe that you're earnest about trying to support the parks in that area. If you did your research, and I'm sure you did, you probably would have found that ML&P at one point had purchased that land. It wasn't HLB, it wasn't the municipality. Originally it was ML&P. And for years they touted an exchange. They wanted that to be developed. They would purchase and develop that as a park for that community in exchange for some of the Centennial Campground, to put 2 new generators behind the existing one into the Centennial Park. So that's really truly the history of what goes on. So the community had this expectation that they would get this park and would be developed actually by really through ML&P in this land swap. That never materialized, and frankly the community wanted Centennial Park and the new Muldoon Park. That's one issue. I did talk to the state DEC, and the level of contamination, from what my understanding is fairly minimal. It's not. There are some pesticides and things that were used in the greenhouse, and it's limited to a small portion. Because it wasn't clearly, as you say, not the pure deep core samples. We don't know how deep it goes, but I don't anticipate, nor did the DEC indicate that there would be any extensive amount. So the remediation will happen regardless of what we do with the property. And again, I go back to this part of the process. No one wanted more than I to have an earlier step at the seat at the table on the East Side District Plan, which kept getting postponed and vetoed. And then, of course, a clear direction that the community has been given time and time and time and time again. Thank you.
Mr. Steele.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't doubt that the community wants that to be a park. We heard it. I heard it. That was one of the first things that we dealt with when I came on the body. It's just that I guess I'm a planning kind of guy, having been an urban regional planner. And zoning is to implement a plan. It's not the other way around. And so I guess I'm a process person too. So we'll see what happens.
Mr. Trombley.
No, it's all been said. I would say, Mr. Demboski, have you had a chance to talk to industry about construction on that centerpiece of land as far as the economics of it?
I have spoke with Real Estate Services on that piece.
No. I'm talking about the actual people who will go out and develop it, build on it.
I spoke to the owners of that land.
Is it developable?
About 7 acres of it on the second lot has peat. But the other acreage, actually, it would be, I have it here, I think it's tract B, would be developable, yes.
Well, with the shortage of land, how come it hasn't been developed at that point then?
Mr. Trombley, I don't know why it hasn't
okay,
been
well,
developed.
I would urge you to do a little more of your homework, but look, you don't represent the area. Mr. Honeman and I do. We've heard the voices of the community. This is what they want. And it's clear we don't need to go through a planning process all the way in September to figure out that we could have done this back in March. It's clear. This is what the community wants.
Ms. Demboski.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't represent that maybe swath of area, Mr. Trombley, but I do represent 50,000 taxpayers of the municipality of Anchorage. And I will stand steadfast in my belief that fiscal responsibility of this piece of property takes a little bit more due diligence than a knee-jerk reaction to dedicate a park. So I'm sorry, but I support delay until after the appropriate process. So I urge a yes vote.
Have no one else in the queue. Please vote on the motion to postpone until September 9th.
Okay, on the motion to postpone until September 9th. Just waiting. It's just recording the vote. Mr. Birch, yes. Ms. Demboski, no. Mr. Steele. Whoop, I'm sorry, let me back up. You probably didn't like that, did you? Right, let me start from scratch, okay? This is on the vote to postpone until September. Mr. Birch, yes. Ms. Demboski, yes. Mr. Steele, yes. Mr. Starr, no. Mr. Flynn, no. Mr. Trombley, no. Mr. Hall, no. Ms. Gray Jackson, no. Ms. Johnston, yes. Mr. Honeman, no. Mr. Trainee, no. The motion fails.
So we have the original item back before us. Anyone, no one in the queue? I want to ask you to vote on the original item.
This is on the motion to approve AO 2014-39. The votes are Mr. Birch, no. Ms. Demboski, no. Mr. Steele, yes. Mr. Starr, yes. Mr. Flynn, yes. Mr. Trombley, yes. Mr. Hall, yes. Ms. Gray Jackson, yes. Ms. Johnston, yes. Mr. Honeman, yes. Mr. Trainee, yes. The motion passes.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Make a motion to move for immediate reconsideration, urge a no vote.
Second.
Okay. Please vote on the immediate reconsideration, urging a no vote.
On the motion for immediate reconsideration on AO 2014-39, the votes are Mr. Birch, no. Ms. Demboski, yes. Mr. Steele, no. Mr. Starr, no. Mr. Flynn, no. Mr. Trombley, no. Mr. Hall, no. Ms. Gray Jackson, no. Ms. Johnston, no. Mr. Honeman, no. Mr. Trainee, no. The motion fails.
We have no special orders or unfinished agenda. We're at audience participation. Anyone that wishes to speak? You just almost didn't make it.
I'm here. I'm back. You're not going to adjourn, are you? Okay.
Yes.
Good evening. My name is Ronald Leva, and unfortunately, I'm back. Recently, there was a shooting adjacent to one of my properties. It turned out it was one of the people that I hire, and unfortunately was a street person. And it's been an issue, and because it is a high crime area, 1,305 calls to the shelter, 892 to Beans. I offered to sell my land that's adjacent to Beans to what I propose as Bindlestick Park. My issue with a conditional use, which cannot be changed except by the petitioner, because I've gone through every meeting with planning and zoning to enforce Mr. Starr's ideas of restrictions to revisit a conditional use. It's not going to happen. The effects on the neighborhood, the crosswalks, garbage pickup, or anything to do. So to tie it in, along with the mayor trying to get a homeless shelter out there at Jewel Lake, that's not going to happen. So you have this location. You need to expand the location, and I suggest to you Bindlestick Park. Mr. Workman and his girlfriend May would have been safer in an enclosed camp facility adjacent to the shelter, because the CAP team closing down camps throughout the city are pushing them near the services that are there. Food, shelter, clothing, social services, and basically you delegated that area to provide those services. Now, you're going to end up buying this property either through a purchase, which I can structure for you either with funds from the state legislature, or buy it through an expansion of ML&P and raise the rates, or I can come after the city through inverse condemnation. Because if Mr. Workman, my employee, was shot, the threat is getting closer and closer to home to Mr. Oleva and his family and his business. And I no longer feel safe there, so I'm in the process of moving, causing great economic hardship, but I'm still vertical and on the right side of the ice. So I want to set up a meeting. Whoever will come forward will entertain the idea of Bindlestick Park. These people don't need housing first. They can basically create a job situation for training. I have 3 acres. I'd like the city to take it over. Do you have any questions?
Have no questions, Mr. Oliva.
Mr. Honeman.
I'm interested and intrigued on your concept. Meet with you offline.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone else? Anyone at all? Chair would.
William Marsh. I spoke before, and I spoke to a number of you about the Uri Park issue, and I'm certain everybody here is dead tired of Uri Park. But I wanted to point out the process used to dispose of that park land recently. Now, that has been withdrawn, and it's no longer on the agenda. But this is what our neighbors were faced with. The Parks and Rec were going to lease this park for 40 years to a sole user group. There was going to be one public meeting on January 23rd, one meeting before the Assembly on January 28th, with a hoped ballot measure for April 1st. I've heard thousands and thousands of comments about public process. This might have been legal public notice, but in no way was this public process. 3 of those most opposed to this lease were all scheduled out of state. And this whole issue of leasing the park for 40 years was never vetted before the Spenard Community Council. I just would like this board to oversee this type of disposal thoroughly and to allow all of us to participate in the process, not just get a notification in the mail.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I'm going to challenge some of Mr. Marsh's comments. The Spenard Community Council voted to twice, and it's in their minutes, to rezone. They would support a rezone of that property twice. As far as the number of people or neighbors or people that were sent notice, there were 5. 5 out of how many were sent? I don't know how many are sent, but whenever there's a notice sent out, it blankets the area. 5. We had endorsements from various organizations, including the council, for over 40. We never got a chance to present that because the meeting was postponed by the municipality based on 5 people that were opposed to it. It's not the process. That's not the process that should be followed. And I'm hoping that with this property that you're working on, you don't let this happen. Get that rezoning done as soon as the plan is approved. Or otherwise, you'll be facing this 20 years down the road like we are supporting the rezone of Uri Park. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Anyone at all? Chair would take a motion to adjourn.
Approved.
Second.
Stand adjourned.
We're done.